clear. The government lied. It was the workers had put in some great controls at the Port Authority. We have members on the tugs, the lines, the pilot boats, the wharfies who do baggage handling. They've got a number of controls in place, and part of it is making sure that the ship's clear, and if it's not clear, that there's certain notifications given. The Ruby Princess didn't speak to the Port Authority. They spoke to the Department of Health. The Department of Health didn't speak to the Port Authority. The ship was allowed to dock under the cover of darkness, and now there's multiple cases out in the community which simply should have been quarantined.
Right, so you're saying what happened when the ship spoke to the Department of Health? They knew there would be people with respiratory illnesses on board this Ruby Princess and didn't declare. And what's your evidence of that?
Well, the evidence comes from the Port Authority, and that'll come out in subsequent deliberations and no doubt parliamentary investigations. But what we understand was that they declared to the Department of Health that 4 passengers had respiratory illness, and the Department of Health advised that there was low risk. What we know now is that that wasn't correct, that there was more cases there, and certainly 48 positive cases of COVID as of yesterday says that there was something wrong. This is a company that had the Grand Princess in California and the Diamond Princess in Japan, where the ships were quarantined. But in New South Wales, it's come on in. There's nothing to see here. Let's do it under the cover of darkness. This ship should have been held outside and should have been proper health and safety protocols put in place by New South Wales Health.
So you're saying the Department of Health heard there were 4 cases of respiratory illness, decided as a result it was low risk. That, of course, turned out to be a lot more cases of people with COVID-19, but that's the assessment they made at the time.
Absolutely, and furthermore didn't disclose that to the Port Authority. So put all the workers, not just the community, but all the workers that attend to cruise ships. But they haven't learnt their lesson, because today at 5 a.m. they were going to bring in the Carnival Spirit, another cruise ship. There's 10 cruise ships that are going to move in and out of Sydney in the next 7 days. The New South Wales Department of Health were going to allow that to happen, as well as the New South Wales Government, with no checks in place. The ship that's coming in today has a crew member. Whilst the passengers are off, the crew members are still on board, and there's a crew member again today on board with respiratory illness. But again, bring the ship in 5 a.m. Now, fortunately, because of the union intervening, they haven't brought the vessel in yet, and they're going to do the checks. But the ministers need to come out today, suspend all cruise ship movements until proper protocols are put in place by the Department of Health and the Port Authority to stop the spread of COVID.
So you're saying that ship, it had 1 confirmed respiratory illness, we don't know what that might have been, from a crew member, and despite that the Department of Health was going to say again it was low risk, it was going to dock at 5 a.m. It hasn't, but that was going to happen.
Absolutely, and it's only because of the intervention of the Maritime Union, and we're challenging the government departments that hasn't happened. Now, that ship's booked before I come on air for 12:30. That's gone back several times to 12:30 today, and they're awaiting the tests. And whilst that crew member's supposedly been in isolation, the 4 passengers on the Ruby Princess were also equally supposedly been in isolation. We don't think the system's correct, and we think government needs to get on board these ships and check them before they come in, not just rely on self-declaration and everyone saying everything's okay, because that's the standard that the New South Wales Government applied to the Ruby Princess.
And we're assuming that cruise ships will basically grind to a halt, but you're saying any more that would come to Australia now, the default should be that there's a very formal procedure. No one's ever just cleared as low risk. There's no such thing basically as a low risk cruise ship in the current climate.
Oh, absolutely not. You don't have low risk COVID-19. It's all serious, as we're seeing. You've got biosecurity, and we called in January for the Port Authority to get biosecurity officers on board all ships before they come in to give a check. They're just relying on self-declaration of ships. Now, that's the standard the New South Wales Government's accepted, and this is an absolute disgrace, not just on a state level, but a national and international level. And Carnival Cruises and the New South Wales Government need to be held to account for not dealing with this in the serious nature that it is.
There's some strong claims you're putting in terms of the ship owners, but also the Department of Health. You say this will come out, but what proof do you have? Is it something you've personally seen in terms of, for example, email communication? What's going to emerge here?
Look, members of the union, I've seen a number of bits of communication, and at the moment everyone's moving at a rate of knots just to try and address the issues on a daily basis. There'll be a time for a forensic debrief on all this and what happened and who said what. But at the end of the day, we're in a national crisis. An international health pandemic is underway. What we need is our government to stand up and start leading on these issues and start addressing it. And the first thing that can happen is that the Ministers for Health and Ports stop any cruise ships coming in until the ships have been checked. Let's stop relying on emails coming in which will all be subject to freedom of information down the track. Let's now start taking proactive steps to make sure that people are well and healthy, as opposed to dismissing the issue.
Yeah, no, I understand the urgency of that call, but when we do come back and look at this, you're saying you've seen email evidence of this communication, that things were low risk despite people with respiratory illness on that previous cruise, and what was going to happen this morning with the other cruise as well?
Absolutely seen it, and that'll all come out in due course. But the evidence I've seen is the same that everyone in Australia's seen, is that the Ruby Princess come into Australia, and media outlets like yours now reporting, as of yesterday, 48 cases of COVID, and I understand it may be going up. You don't have to be a genius to work out that that ship should have been left outside, and proper standards put in with regards to health and safety, and ensuring that the unwell passengers don't come back into society, as what the New South Wales government has allowed to happen.